Business, a podcast about, what is it about? It's about business, marketing, growth strategy, staff, clients, babies, marriage. I'm Christina. This is Peter. We're founders and leaders of CIPR Communications, and we are finishing up our series on marketing strategy. So I feel like it's like your 12-step marketing strategy program. But, 10-minute blast. So the last 11 episodes, we've been, okay, get your blank piece of paper. So if you've been following along, hopefully you've got a couple sheets full now of all of the different things we've discussed.
All right. So this one's all about putting your plan into action. This is kind of an interesting topic because, putting your plan into action still probably it doesn't involve getting out there and just getting going necessarily, although it does, although there's some steps ahead of that. For example, understanding how you're going to track things, putting in all the right codes for tracking, for example, understanding what, putting those goals into your.
I love this part because Peter's just desperately trying to sound technical. You put the codes in the place and you put
you basically need to start setting it up, is what I'm saying. There's a whole setup portion of things that starts before you're actually executing and really running. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, Christina?
Yeah, what I'll say about putting your plan into action is just do it. I think once you've gone through building your marketing strategy, I would never say, oh yeah, just do that tactic. But if you have your marketing strategy and you know your personas and you're feeling comfortable with things and it's okay, now it's time to go. And I think some people get nervous at this stage. And so I think the next thing, and something we're going to be talking about next on the podcast too, is the budget, right? So what do you have to play with? The worst, I remember being, in a communications marketing advisor position and being told to execute tactics, but then having really no line of sight on what the budget was. And so you're almost playing this, write a number on a sticky note and pass it across the table to a boss. It's no, what is the marketing budget? And then as a team, based on your personas, based on the strategy, based on the goals, based on the tools you need, where is the money being allocated? How is it going? Is it a 50-50 split? Is it a 90-10 split? How much is going towards staff? How much is going towards agency? How much is a tactic, right? All of those things we need to really think about. Mm-hmm. Hopefully your finance team or your financial advisor is helping you kind of make these decisions. But Peter, you often tell people certain percentages of spend.
Yeah, there's sort of industry standard percentages of spend. I would say it's anywhere from 3% of revenue to 20% of revenue, depending on, if you're in the B2B space, B2C space, if you're a new business, if you're in a new industry. There's lots of factors, right? But I would say, a healthy marketing budget should be in the 5% to 10% range of revenue. And that, that includes everything. But then, once you sort of, and I would also say that once you're developing your strategy and doing all of the things we've been talking about, you're thinking about really your budget the whole time, right? And your budget should be based on a couple of things. One of them being, what does it cost to do stuff, right? If you're in the dentistry industry, for example, and you want to do a PPC campaign, your cost per click is going to be expensive. There's no way around it. It's competitive, and dentists are all playing in the game, right? So then you got to do some math, right? It's okay, if it's $10 per click and you want to get 300 clicks, well, there's your math, right? And usually 300 clicks is what we look for in a PPC campaign. I just use that number because then if you got 2% of that turn into conversions, then potentially you have 6 new customers at the low end, right? Yeah. But really it's about sort of doing some math backwards, understanding what it is you want to achieve, and then that's really how you kind of get to your budget number, or one way to get to your budget number. But we're going to spend a lot more time, talking about budgets in the next series. But, in terms of just getting going, again, I think people need to understand that there's a process in terms of getting going, and there's a sort of you start, and then you kind of test and see how it's going. I like to think about it as, if you could spend a month or two kind of really thinking through your strategy and developing all your plans, and then another month probably getting everything set up properly. And then, so now you're at 2 to 3 months, call it 3 months. And then for 3 months, you're probably just running your campaigns and gathering data and learning, right? And getting better and optimizing, right? And then by 6 months is probably when you have everything fully optimized. And now you're kind of, everything's running as the way it should be. And you really know what's working, what's not working. And maybe that's the time where you start to then scale up, right? Now it's like, okay, we got this thing fine tuned. It's doing exactly what it needs to be doing. Now let's like blow it up with like, let's add some more budget and really get this thing going, right? Or maybe it's, hey, we got enough leads and this is going at a good pace. You got to, depending on your business, what you're doing. But I think I like to think about the world in that kind of pace when it comes to just getting going, because even getting going, it's like it takes a month minimum to even get any kind of useful data once you've actually started campaigns and started marketing tactics, right? And
yeah,
so
I think that's one important thing, from a client perspective. And I do 100% still think, you got to budget is your next step. If you're putting the plan into action,
yeah,
you need to be thinking about budget, because the worst thing that you can do is either start executing and run out of money so that the things you're talking about, you can't even see to the end,
mm-hmm.
or you build that budget so that you can have really thoughtful conversations about what tools do we need? Okay, Mr. Marketing Agency sales guy, this is my budget. Like I think about clients that, have had a lot of success with us, and they're the ones who've known that their numbers from the beginning. This is how much I have to spend. And then we get to go away and say, okay, well, here's what we can do with that.
Yeah. Here's how we can maximize your investment, right? Is what the way I like to approach it from a sales. Here's how the most we can fit into that budget to get the ROI you're looking for.
Totally. So. And then I think that like, okay, budget, great. There then is this like, and I think it shocks most people. Like on my desk right now, there's no like big red button that's like,
go.
Like PPC ads.
Doesn't work that way.
SEO maximization.
Yeah.
Like, to your point about it takes time to set up. And I think in early days of CIPR, we were even naive to really understand how long it took to set things up. And I don't necessarily think that that's, getting to know a business, but there's an aspect of that. And then there's like, people underestimate how long it takes to track down passwords, right? Like if you're bringing an agency in, or if you're trying to set everything up that needs to be integrated and set up, it's like, that's like a month's worth of work.
Yeah.
And then, then you think about things like, okay, now setting up your Google Data Studio, and what are my goals, and throwing in, to your point before, code in the back end to track those goals and milestones, and graphics. Part of what we do from the setup phase is like create a suite of Canva graphics that we can leverage, client can leverage, other stakeholders can leverage, so that look and feel of the different campaigns that we're putting out there remains the same no matter who's communicating. So there is at least a month of things to do. I think that be cautious of the agency that tells you, oh yeah, within a month, number one on Google, and within a week we'll have this up. It's like, you want, like, when you're setting it up, do it, go, because there's a setup period. Right? Like the faster you can go, okay, ready, you can get through the setup and then get going.
And I would say the number one thing that businesses do wrong, and just sort of really where marketing maybe gets a bad rap, is they're not patient enough. And I think that's, for me now in my sales role, my 2021 goal is really to like really get people understanding, taking a long view when it comes to marketing, and understanding that this is an investment in your business, and really getting people to understand that, hey, it might take 6 months to get an ROI, but you know what? Once you get there, then there's like an exponential sort of factor to it, right? Once you really, and I say this with building a business too, because it takes 5 years to be an overnight success, as anybody knows that's building a business right now. But it's like you're pushing a rock uphill for a while, and it really feels painful, and it really feels like it's not working, and it feels like it's just kind of just not great for a while. But then you get to a point where the rock starts to go down the hill and it starts to build momentum. And when you're in a lot of businesses, I don't think, go into a marketing sort of campaign plan strategy with that kind of mindset, and they get really skittish really quickly because it's like, oh my God, I just invested $3,000 into a PPC advertising campaign and I didn't get the return I was hoping for. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with almost any tactic. And however, again, once you sort of get there and you hit your sweet spots, it really starts to sort of pay off. And then you get to a point where it gets cheaper and cheaper over time because of the investments you made. And so you need sort of, potentially less over time, or just different types of tactics and strategies and different kinds of investments over time, to get a better return as you go. Right. So,
Totally.
yeah, so getting going is exciting. But I think we need to manage our expectations a little bit in terms of the outcomes we can expect right at the beginning when we start going.
It's true. Getting going means
Starting.
not
Not succeeding
and
right
well,
away.
and not the big button that's okay, and now you're live, right?
Yeah.
So you've created your marketing strategy, you have your tactical plan, you're thinking about your budget, which is actually our next series, which we're going to talk about. Then you're thinking about who's going to do it. So am I thinking about agency? Am I thinking about internal staff? Am I thinking about a tool? And we've talked about this, do a series on that. What's in-house versus marketing agency and how you can kind of tool that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the next step is the get going step, but in a phased approach. So get going means start, because there's setup involved, especially if this is your first time doing things, especially if you're not even starting with a website or a social media presence.
Yeah.
All of those things are factors and take time.
You got to build as I like to say, you got to build your foundation before you can really start to leverage it. Right. So that's the getting going part. Might even be working on your foundation more, like your website and your social media assets and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, like every time getting going becomes easier. So if you've never got going on a marketing strategy this year, okay, yeah, you've got a quarter of heavy lifting to do, maybe more, in terms of getting, truly set up. But next year it's going to be easier because, the website you've just built and invested in maybe just needs some tweaks this time around, and your SEO is already working for you. And right. And then the setup in year 3 looks different because you're, now you're killing it and maybe you need an app now or whatever it is. But it's that, I don't want to say slow and steady wins the race, but really
it does though. 100%.
theme, the theme is, okay, slow it down. You want to market? Okay, let's build 12 steps into a marketing strategy. And okay, you're ready to go. Okay, budget, people, setup.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just make a couple final comments is that one, I would still build a full strategy, even if you don't have the budget to execute it all, because then you can pick and choose when you've really thought everything through, spend the time up front on the strategy, because you can execute one tactic at a time. Right. And you can, if your budget's low, you don't have to do it all at once. Right. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming and huge. So despite that, you still have the whole strategy in place though. And so then, you can add tactics as your budget and as you succeed. So that's point one. Point two is that, and this is the way we like to do things, is there's some tactics that produce quicker results than others, right? And so it's nice to have a mix of some tactics that'll produce a quicker ROI and some tactics that are longer term tactics, like search engine optimization, that might take a little bit longer to see that return. And so that way you're kind of balancing the time thing, and you're making it work in the long run, but also getting some short run wins. Which is important. And I understand that. I understand the psychology of a business, and I understand when you're spending thousands of dollars and you're like really like needing our ROI. I 100% get it. So I don't want people to think, I'm not sympathetic to that, but really the real big returns come in when you've invested over time with a thought out strategy.
There you go. And, the right agency should be able to tell you what tactics fit into what in terms of that kind of phased, quick win, longer term investment approach.
For sure.
Well, there you have it. Marketing strategy. Next, we're talking budget. So, I better sharpen my pencil and calculator over here because you know how I feel about
You
numbers.
got that little itty bitty calculator in your Christmas popper hat
Cracker.
thing. So
My
cracker, so
cracker.
you can use that little calculator and just calculate all the little numbers you want.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay.
See you.